Good morning, everyone. Before I begin, I want complete honesty from this room. How many of us have asked our parents why and received an extremely convincing, deeply researched, and a scientifically proven answer? Because I said so. Parents, you don't need to raise your hands, we know. Another one for the students. How many of you have been sitting in a class, understood absolutely nothing, and when the teacher asked, everybody understood, you somehow find yourself doing this? Yes, ma'am. And meanwhile, in your head, we don't even know what chapter is going on. But think about that for a moment, because there was a time we weren't like this. A 4-year-old doesn't pretend to understand. A 4-year-old will ask, why is the sky blue? Why can't I have chocolate for breakfast? Why do I have to sleep? Why are the birds flying? You answer. But they ask why. Again, why? So many whys. And eventually, you say, because I said so. And yet, the 4-year-old turns 14. And 18, and then 38. And somewhere along the journey, the questions become quieter. So today, I'm not here to talk about why children ask so many questions, but something more interesting. Why do we stop? I don't think we suddenly become less curious. We become more self-conscious about our curiosity. Think about school. We're constantly asking, what's the answer to this? What's your rank? What percentage did you get? How did it go? And there's absolutely nothing wrong with knowing those answers. But somewhere, we start associating intelligence with having the answer. Knowing feels smart. Not knowing makes us uncomfortable. Not knowing at 5 makes us curious, whereas at 15, it may make us look embarrassed. Asking a question publicly means, I don't know. What will others think? What if my question sounds stupid? What if everybody else knows? So we begin lowering our hands. And that doesn't just stop at school. Adults do exactly the same thing. We sit in meetings pretending we've understood the presentation. We follow systems because that's just the way it is. We make life choices because everybody around us is doing the same thing. And slowly, the why gets replaced by, that's just how it is. And that's where we lose something incredibly valuable. Let me try something. I'll ask you all a question. I want you to answer the first one out loud, right? What's 2 plus 2? 4. Very intelligent audience. The second question. Why is a school day structured the way it is? Maybe this one. Why does a 90% sound excellent, but a 60% does not? Okay, maybe this one. Why does success have to mean the same thing to everybody? You see, we spend years learning how to answer questions, but how much time do we actually spend in creating good ones? And this is not only philosophy. Here's the part I find fascinating. Researchers have shown what happens in the brain when we are curious. In a neuroscience study, a group of people were asked trivia questions and rated how curious they were to know the answers. It was found out that the group that was most curious happened to remember the answers for a much longer time, until much later. And not only that, here's the surprising part. They also happened to remember the sequence of events and things they encountered while they were curious. Brain image here shows heightened activity in the hippocampus, one of key brain memory systems. In simpler terms, when you genuinely want to learn, you're more ready to learn. That's why there's a huge difference in someone telling you, memorize this, and your brain asking, wait, why does this happen? One information is been given to you, the other is what you're looking for. And curiosity turns a passive learner into an active one. I've experienced this firsthand. I have been working closely with children through PrepRite. And if there's one thing children have taught me, it's this. Curiosity is incredibly natural. You don't have to teach a 4-year-old to wonder. In fact, sometimes you wish you could turn the wondering off for 5 minutes. Every why is a child knocking at the door. And when we say, because I said so, we may get compliance, but we're also closing the door. But at PrepRite, we'd rather open it together. My own journey started with questions coming from finance and economics and leading up to early childhood education. I began asking, why do some children love learning, whereas the others begin fearing mistakes? Why can a child spend 45 minutes trying to understand how something works, but not even 10 minutes trying to memorize it? Why are we so interested in what all children know, but lesser in how they think? All of these questions led me to study neuroscience, child psychology, and right brain education. But the biggest lesson wasn't an answer I got, it was this. A good question changes what you notice. And that does not stop being true when you're 5. Okay, sorry. Think about a child, a 5-year-old. He tells his parents, I want to be an astronaut. The proud parents with a beaming smile, oh, that's wonderful. But you know, that's very difficult. But why? Because hardly anyone gets to do it. Now imagine a 40-year-old announcing the same thing. I want to be an astronaut. Most families would probably say, oh, that's wonderful. Have you tried a career in finance, maybe? There's something beautiful about the child's response. The child does not deny the reality. He simply hasn't learned to confuse probability with possibility. The same statement, hardly anyone gets to do it. The child hears, so I probably can, whereas the adult hears, so maybe I can't. And that's what a question does. It opens more avenues. So how do we start asking more questions? Let's play something I call the why swap. We get a statement and we try and convert it into a question. The first one, I'm terrible at math. We convert it into, why am I finding math difficult? One defines you, the other gives you a problem to solve. Let's try this one. You don't understand me. The question, why are we finding it difficult to understand each other? One creates sides, the other creates a conversation. We've always done it this way. At workplaces, sometimes teachers, we always say, we've always done it this way. We convert it into a question. Why are we still doing it this way? And that's where improvement begins. My child doesn't listen. Everybody says that. Question, why isn't what I'm saying reaching my child? Here, we're examining communication rather than only behavior. And the last one, I can't. Does anyone want to convert it into a question? Why can't I? Exactly. And that's the power of why. But there is an important distinction. Asking why doesn't mean rejecting everything. It doesn't mean every rule is wrong. It doesn't mean your parents know nothing. Students, I'm sorry, I know that would have been a better topic for a TED Talk. But questioning isn't rebellion. It's examination. Sometimes we ask why and discover this rule actually makes sense. This advice was right. Maybe it's worth working hard for, but now you're doing it because you understand it, not simply because you've inherited it. And that's what a question does. It reveals another possibility and it widens your horizon. I want to leave you with the 1 why a day challenge. For the next 7 days, I want you to ask one genuine why every day. Not 50, just one. Question one habit, one belief, one rule, one assumption. Why do I want these marks? Why am I afraid to speak up? Why do I care what other people think? Why am I choosing this career? Why do I believe I'm not good at something? And don't rush to answer. Just sit with the question. Because the purpose of why is not to find an immediate answer. Maybe it is to make us look back, introspect, and then reflect. We live in an extraordinary time. We have more information available to us than any generation before us. Google has answers, teachers have answers, parents definitely have answers, and now AI can give you answers in a matter of seconds. So maybe the skill that will matter increasingly isn't who knows the most. Maybe it is who knows what to ask. And perhaps that's what we need to relearn. Not how to have all the answers, but how to ask better questions. Because the smartest person in the room is not the one who knows it all. Maybe it's the one who's brave enough to ask questions nobody else thought to ask. So the next time somebody tells you, that's impossible, we've always done it this way, you're not the kind of person who can do this, before you accept their answer, ask your question. Why? And perhaps, even more importantly, why can't I? Thank you.